Okay, well, for those who are here, thanks for joining promptly. And um, I want to welcome you. My name is Cyrus Worrells. I'm Director of Programs at the Institute for Spirituality and Health here in the Texas Medical Center. Um, I guess less so part of the Texas Medical Center in terms of location now, but more in terms of institutional affiliation since everything's been virtual. Um, but for those who are new, and I know many of you heard about this through Jeremiah, maybe through the VA, as well as through Saybrook, and this may be your first program with the Institute for Spirituality and Health. So just a little bit about ISH. We are 65-year-old organization and have gone through many phases over the years, beginning with chaplaincy training as part of the medical center in the 50s and biomedical ethics. And now we operate under a research model of, under a university model of research education and direct services. We have a whole variety of different programs that seek to serve our mission of enhancing well-being by exploring the relationship between spirituality and health. And we're both interfaith and non-faith. We explore spirituality through the many ways that people find meaning and connection and define it for themselves, and the many ways that we consider health and what it means to be healthy and well. And to that end, well, I encourage you to look at more of what we do at spiritualityandhealth.org. But as it pertains to today, obviously we all witnessed in our own way the killing of George Floyd and the way that brought racism to the forefront of our collective consciousness. And so obviously this Black History Month is on people's minds a little more than it is every year. And since the death of George Floyd, we've been having a lot of conversations about race. A nod to Larry Payne, I don't know if he's here for this session, who became our Director of Race Reconciliation and Response. So we've been talking a lot about it, and we've been talking about what can ISH uniquely contribute? What do we bring to the conversation? And then Jeremiah, Dr. Jeremiah Piercy, connected with us via Saybrook University very serendipitously, as all our connections happen, and is such an incredible person. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know him, especially over these last few weeks, but he brings a very unique offering that you'll experience over this session and the next 4 sessions. With his background as a military veteran, as well as with a doctorate in cognitive psychology, he specializes in facilitating stress-reducing and relaxation states that also help us deeply experience things, deeply experience ourselves, and a felt sense of spirituality. And so when it comes to race, and I think it's perfectly fitting for our work as the Institute for Spirituality and Health that we would take this approach of trying to help people deeply connect with a felt sense of what it means, what race means, what it has meant, and the history of race relations, and to put themselves in another's shoes and more deeply understand their own shoes. So I can't thank enough Jeremiah for being with us. I've already taken too much of his time. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of this. And Dr. Piercy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cyrus. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you all for joining us on this occasion. As Cyrus said, it has become a consistent conversation over the last year or so since George Floyd's killing. And really what I hope to do with this is give people a chance to really experience a part of history that is rarely talked about. You know, when we discuss Black history in this country, it routinely falls on the shoulders of those that propelled the Black experience forward. People like Martin Luther King and even Rosa Parks, you know, that fought for these rights, but there is a lot that isn't talked about. And so what I kind of want to do with this session is to really give people an understanding of what the world was like um, back when all of this began, or rather as it continued throughout the history, and what each step meant for African Americans in this country. And really not just African Americans, but all Americans, because, you know, Black history is very much American history. And so I really want this to be an experience that you get to empathize in a way that maybe you had never thought to empathize before, or maybe just never had the opportunity. And so I kind of wanted to talk about myself real quick as we start. So I grew up a military brat, traveled all over the world, and then I myself joined the military. And, you know, throughout my 35 plus years as an individual on this earth, it's been very interesting to me as I come off very ethnically ambiguous. So people tend to not know how to precisely label me. And I've kind of had that good fortune just to say that my experience has been different from a lot of other people's experiences. And the fact that I'm pretty much 50% white and 50% Black has given me something that many other people never get the chance to have. And so I grew up in an all-white family, and so my perspectives are very unique approaching this topic because I've lived the more Caucasian experience of what it's like to be a white family in this world and have those experiences, while also understanding what it's like to have some darker skin tones and what that experience is like, what challenges both of those experiences have, and what opportunities. So I really want this to be a change of perspective for you to empathize, to perhaps journey or even live through an experience that is not your own, at least not in this world as we perceive it now, but in a way that it will give you perspective on what it means to be Black in America, perspective on what it means to be an American in general. And so I also want to share that this experience is going to be one of your own. It's going to be very unique. And it may be powerful, it may be evocative, and it may be exactly what you need to experience in this political climate of 2020 and 2021. But I just ask you to sit with your experience after. So after this is all over, to just sit maybe for an hour, maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe throughout the entire series, and just let your experience marinate. Really understand what you went through and what it means for you moving forward. So, so as we continue throughout this session, just feel your way through this experience. Try your best to escape the confines of your mind and what should or shouldn't be, and just go into it with an open mind and an open heart. And let this series fuel what 2020 has already begun. Let it sit in your mind and marinate into action. And it's my hope that this event inspires you in ways that don't just provoke interesting thoughts, but also provoke interesting actions. Actions for an anti-racist cause, for a cause of equality, and really a cause for all Americans. so that we can all live in this country free and equal. So, Frederick Douglass said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." And I believe that was last year for the United States, the struggle. And change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. From President Barack Obama. So at this time, I just ask you to find that nice, quiet place, perhaps dim the lights even, put on headphones if you have them, and really join me on this journey by closing your eyes and just experiencing it as best you can in an experiential point. So find that comfortable place, and we'll start this session with a short relaxation. And then from there, we'll go deeper into a guided meditation where I hope everyone will be able to really have an incredible experience. So at this point, go ahead and find that spot, and we'll start in just a moment. James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson wrote "Lift Every Voice and Sing" in 1899, which has also been called the Black National Anthem. So we'll begin with this. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty, let our rejoicing rise. High as the listening skies, let it resound loud as the roiling sea. Sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed? We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright stars cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears. Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. And now we'll begin a short relaxation. So as you feel the weight of your body on the chair, on the bed, wherever you find yourself tonight, just go ahead and start to feel all the muscles relaxing. Feeling the upper body relax down to the legs. And then we'll begin to relax each part individually to help get you into a deeper state of relaxation. So we'll begin with the right hand. Just begin to notice the right hand, and as the right hand relaxes, just allow it, or allow yourself to feel those sensations in the hand as it relaxes. Feel the muscles beginning to soften. Feel your fingers relaxing. And just notice what sensation that is that you feel. And as you begin to notice this comfortable, perhaps relaxing, even invigorating type of sensation, just begin to allow it to expand up your arm. First to the wrist, the forearm, your elbow, and then your upper arm. Feeling the whole right arm relax, relaxing more and more with each breath. And then begin to feel that same sensation in your left hand, feeling the left hand relax, feeling all the muscles in the left hand letting go. And as you do, just let that same sensation move up the arm, moving to the wrist, the forearm, the elbow, and then your upper arm. Both arms now, feeling them relaxed by your side or perhaps crossed over on your body, relaxing more with each breath, just beginning to feel the weight of your arms. And then we'll begin to relax the whole body, beginning at the top of your head. And you can visualize this relaxation like the end of a shower, where the last few drops of water land on your head and begin to run down your body. So you can feel it, the relaxation growing at the top of your head, the same sensation that was in your hand. And then begin to allow it to move down to the forehead, the cheeks and jaw, letting all the muscles relax. Down to the neck, feeling all the neck muscles let go. Feeling the head become just a bit heavier as all the muscles in the neck relax. Feeling the relaxation in your shoulders. As the shoulders relax, feeling the tension just beginning to leave. Down to the chest and back, letting all the muscles relax. Down to the stomach and low back, finding a nice comfortable sensation there. And just letting all of those muscles let go, becoming softer and softer. And then down to the waist, the hips, and then the thighs. And as you begin to feel it in your thighs, just allow this major muscle group a little more time to relax. Feeling all the strands of muscle in your thighs letting go. Feeling the thighs starting to flatten, perhaps as gravity pulls your body down to the earth. Feeling that nice, comfortable softness in the thighs. As the relaxation then begins to move down your legs, down to the knee, the calf, the ankle, and then the feet. Allowing both legs to relax, sitting comfortably or lying down comfortably. And just enjoying for a moment the sensations in your body that allow you to know that you are relaxed, that you feel relaxed. And as you begin to notice these sensations of relaxation, just allow yourself to be transported to a new place. From the comfort of your home, you can go to a very specific place. A specific place in the 1800s, right as the Emancipation Proclamation is due to be signed. It's September of 1862, and Abraham Lincoln has strangely rose to power despite just as much opposition. But there's hope for you, your family, perhaps your friends, brothers and sisters, as throughout these lands, especially those to the south, they are disenfranchised and even enslaved. And for centuries, they have worked the fields in the south. They have picked the cotton. They have toiled beneath the sun, the hot days that bake, and the many hours that it took to even tend to a field, to pick the plantations clean of cotton. And so perhaps you find yourself walking into this strange city as an escaped slave. Even though the slaves were due to be released January 1st of 1863, you didn't want to wait. Perhaps it's something that you saw. There were several riots recently that you'd heard about where slaves rose up against their masters in an attempt to free themselves, only to wind up hanging in the gallows. And so maybe there's a little apprehension as you walk into this new city, not quite sure of what to expect, not quite sure what freedom meant in the North, because maybe all you'd experienced was being a slave in the South. But you have hope. Hope abounds everywhere here. You even see interracial mingling, something that you had never seen in the southern part of this United States. And it may pique your interest as great people such as Frederick Douglass, an anti-abolitionist, has created a movement in the North to free those slaves in the South. Even there's talk of war on the horizon, a war of the North versus the South. And maybe you don't know much about that, but you do know that now that you're here, it's time to figure out how to help, to free others just like you, to participate in this mass exodus of slavery. And so perhaps you find a place in this little town. Maybe you set up a life, find a way to make do, and you go on through the days and maybe find a way to join Douglass and other anti-abolitionists, writing books and newspapers, giving speeches, even standing on the Senate floor to give the senators a perspective of what it's like to be a slave. And even though many will dismiss your experiences and those of your friends or colleagues or others fighting for the same rights as you, you've found peace so far here in the North. And now I don't know exactly what that looks like for you, and it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that in this world, you notice how different you are. You feel different wherever you walk around, even though the blacks here are free and slavery in the North has long been gone. There are still tensions, scuffles, even killings on certain nights as the rain falls and the carriages rush down the muddy roads. And so you begin to acclimate to this world, a world where you don't fit in quite right, but there is hope here. There is hope. And in just a few months, Abraham Lincoln will free the slaves. And so time passes. Fall becomes winter. And then on the first day of January, 1863, it is announced that all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people shall then be in rebellion against the United States, as all slaves henceforward are forever free. And as this rings out, the environment changes as the two sides start to prepare for the unthinkable, as the two sides prepare to go to war. And what that means for you as a Black person in this world. Should you fight? Should you figure out another way to assist? What would you do? What would be a meaningful way for you to contribute? And so, as the war rages on, perhaps you join and find a way to fight against the South. Maybe you simply work the Underground Railroad for a time, doing as best you can to help other slaves escape, even drawing routes, maps, and different points where a slave can go through the lands of the South, heading north to freedom. Freedom from their oppressors, but also freedom from the war, which is now turning bloody. But there is still many battalions, just Black battalions that are fighting alongside the other Americans. And at that point in time, all Americans are fighting for the freedom. Some fighting for freedom from slavery. Some fighting for freedom from the North. And some fight for freedom for people in general. And it's this headbutting that continues on. And through the years until 1865, the war rages. And eventually, the South gives up. And maybe you, now living in the North, feel the excitement of real change coming. Perhaps even of real peace, a harmony between two different races, two different cultures. But even then, many of the slaves have not even been notified. Many of the slaves don't know they are free. And due to the technological disadvantages of the time and the disadvantages in literacy for many Black people, they don't know they are free. And for 2.5 years, all those slaves in the South are still used, are still punished, are still enslaved. And it would take 2.5 years for the Northern Army to finally make its way to the last bastion of slavery in the United States, right here in Galveston, Texas. And in June 19th of 1865, the slaves in Galveston are finally notified that they are free. Maybe you even traversed through the South to be one of the first to let them know. Because now there's a reconciliation that needs to happen. Blacks, undereducated, without any skills other than hard labor. And so we need to take on a new position. How do we take hundreds of thousands of uneducated slaves and teach them how to live in society, how to work for themselves, how to work for a wage, how to be human in this world? And so maybe it begins here in Galveston. And you set up a small shop, maybe a small school, a small business of some kind, with the hope of using this freedom and perhaps giving aid to the other people within this region. And some of the emancipated slaves quickly fled. Many fled west, some of them to the north, to states like Kansas and Colorado, while others became wage laborers for their former owners even. And most importantly still, African Americans could now make choices for themselves about where they labored and the type of work performed. What would you do at that time? If you find yourself in Galveston, Texas, how do you pull yourself up and out of slavery? What skills do you have to do so? What wages do you have? To some extent, there is little hope for your success in this new world. And even despite the freedom, it still does not feel like you're free. The day before last, you were approached by a stranger. Maybe they said something painful to you, something horrific. Maybe they nudged you or shoved you. Maybe you found a burning cross in your yard, the flames reminiscent, perhaps of many slaves that you saw burned. Maybe even from time to time, just walking down the road, there is a dead Black person. And all these signs, you find a way to stay, to bite your tongue, to keep working in the best ways you know how, but you are scared. Anytime you go into town, the fear that you may not come back, the fear that maybe your family might not come back. And if you have kids, a spouse, your mother, father, if you are so lucky to have kept them throughout this all, what do they do? How do you proceed in this world with people you care about so deeply? How just one small interaction can wind up your last. And so this new world despite the claims of freedom, is really anything other than free. Every step you take is a risk. Every business you establish, a risk. Every child you have, a risk. And you may even walk into town from time to time and feel your heart beginning to race. You see the looks, the stares. They don't want you here. They don't want you among them, and you can feel it. Maybe they say nothing. Maybe they do nothing. But all you need to know about how they perceive you is in the way they look at you, the way they treat you, the way prices seem to suddenly go up as you're buying an item, despite watching the person ahead of you paying less. And this is the price you have accepted for your freedom. You understand this, that most likely for the rest of your life, this discrimination will be something you live with. And so as you go throughout this world, the world begins to change even more. And now there's motivation among the African American community that we as an uneducated race can only succeed if we make great strides towards educating ourselves, toward understanding this new world, educating our ways to those of the white man. And so we begin to form our own schools, our own cities, our own districts. And even though the majority of African Americans still cannot read or write, Northerners are now coming to the South to help, many of whom are white women, because they recognize the need. And so they travel to the South and set up new schools. But even in doing so, and even as white folk, the schools are threatened. Black kids are chased out of the schools. Notes and other types of trinkets are nailed to the door, warning that if you continue to educate yourself or your kids, it may be the last. And even several schools are burned down. And the tension is there. You can feel the tension. As Blacks begin to gain more equality, you can see the pushback. There are many that don't like what is going on. And so now it's become common that parents walk their children to schools, that you never walk alone. If you are going anywhere as a Black person, you make sure to bring a friend. And if you can, bring 4 friends. Because there are stories about what happens to a solitary Black person. And this is the world that you are beginning to raise children. Perhaps finding spouse, making friends, but always wondering if today will be your last day, if today you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the change is coming. And things are changing really quickly. Just 7 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, Congress passes and ratifies in 1870 the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which grants African American men the right to vote. A historic ruling. Historic ruling for Black people that just 7 years prior weren't even considered human. And maybe even voting becomes a thing that Black people struggle with, as going to the polls means standing amongst crowds of people that don't like you. And in your city, maybe they run you off. Support for your kind they don't want. And so even though things are changing, a lot has stayed the same. And as things change, the tension begins to grow. The tension begins to grow more and more. And so maybe it comes down to one day where you were trying to just take public transportation to get to work. Something you may have done hundreds of times before. But on this day, the bus is hijacked. And you see many of the other African Americans on the bus taken off of the bus. In fact, they take everyone off the bus and begin to even corral those from their houses. A giant mob. A mob of people that do not want equality. They do not want you and your kind to succeed. And you know these types to be dangerous. And so as they march with guns against your backs, marching you, perhaps into the town square, you can begin to feel your heart race. Maybe you feel your thoughts race. What would happen next? What about my kids? What about my family? And as they march you further and further into town, gathering more and more Blacks, now numbering somewhere in the hundreds, you may even begin to feel scared. Scared for what this means. The tension has always been there. But you had hope. Hope that things would change. But now your hope is to merely get out of this predicament alive. And so they march everyone to the middle of the town. And as you stand there, perhaps they bring up the gallows. And you know where this goes. But there's not much you can do about it. And who knows exactly what they are thinking. And maybe you simply grab the person's hand next to you. You can feel their arms shaking, their palms sweaty. And even though it's a cool 60 degrees, it is hot. And the sun shining down on your face doesn't help. And maybe you wonder what's to happen next. And just as they're about to begin, another group come from the other direction, a much smaller group this time, but still a group of white folk. And even though they're vastly outnumbered, they stand strong. They oppose what is about to happen. And maybe for a while, there's quite a lot of yelling. Perhaps even a gunshot or two that quells shortly after. And nobody comes out injured, but the tension is still there. You can feel it in the air. Just like on those days of the big thunderstorms that come and the pressure of the air changes, and you can just tell that something is about to happen. You can feel it in your bones. And as you stand amongst that group, as they get ready to hang the first few blacks, eventually a small group of white folk are able to come to an agreement with these people that blacks will not enter their part of town after a certain hour, or maybe that they're not allowed into the town at all, to leave their district alone. Because blacks are nothing more than animals, and they cannot live amongst animals. And then the party splits. Somehow, by some miracle, no one is dead. By some miracle, you still stand, perhaps gripping that person's hand next to you, not even realizing how hard either of you are squeezing, feeling your heart about to beat out of your chest. And it's such a surreal experience that maybe you don't know quite what to make of it. Maybe you take that fear and hold on to it for the rest of your life. Maybe you're able to get over it. Or maybe it also shows the goodness in people. That despite an angry mob willing to kill 300 some odd black people, there are many people who will sacrifice their own lives to ensure that your life is valued, that your life has value. And it's these people that begin to pave the way for you and your family. Suddenly, you're being invited over to their houses for dinners, maybe even barbecues. You're beginning to learn about them and them about you, to share different cultures. And even though there are still many with hate in their heart, there are also many with love in their hearts. And so the world begins to change even more as those that hate group together and hate, and those that love and respect group together with love and respect. But these two opposing forces will eventually come to a head. And as Jim Crow laws begin to expand across the South, in 1872, the first colored senator and representatives are appointed to the 41st and 42nd Congress of the United States in South Carolina. There is hope. But at the same time, there's another fear rising. The Ku Klux Klan has been gaining momentum. And those ideologies. And so, what's to happen next may leave you still wondering what to do or where to go. How do you protect your family? Do you stay in your little town and protect them the best you can? Or do you flee? Do you live your life in fear with the hope of peace? Or do you find a way to escape? There are many different ways this could go, and maybe you don't even know exactly what is right for you. But one thing is certain. Perhaps you want to help. Perhaps you want to be the change. Perhaps you want to make a difference. And so, that may be the route you choose. Instead of staying silent, instead of staying separated, you find a way to continue to make a difference. And so I will end this session with this. History has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. Michelle Obama. And he who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. Muhammad Ali. And so now, I hope you are relaxed. I hope you feel at peace despite leaving at a point of tension. And I hope that your experience is one that you hadn't had before. An experience that can help you feel new feelings, perspectives that allow for new thoughts, and hope that we can continue to grow and build and live together. So you can just begin to wake yourself up, feeling your fingers and toes, perhaps giving them a wiggle to wake them up. And then when you are ready, you can open your eyes.